Hello there, and welcome to episode 2 of our Appwrite series. I am Akash Srinivasan, and in this video, we will be demonstrating on how to construct a Google authentication system using Next.js and Appwrite Web SDK. Now, let's hop on to appwrite.io and just sign in. It is redirecting us to the dashboard. And now, let's create a new project and let us name it Google Auth Demo. Let me click on Create, and the project has been created. Now, let us link our web app to Appwrite. Here, if we forget this vital step, we'll be getting course error whenever we try to send requests to the Appwrite Web SDK. So, to avoid that, let us fill the form. Let me add a name. Let's say Google Auth Demo, and let me add a host name of localhost as we are working on that. After you host it somewhere, you could just add your host name like Vercel, Netlify, etc. If you are developing a Chrome extension or a VS Code extension, you should add an asterisk over here, which indicates the universal host name. For now on, let's just stick on localhost and let me click on next. Later, we have some starter code snippets over here. Let me just skip the optional options. And yeah, it has been created. Now, let's create a new tab and search for Google Cloud Console. Click on the first link and it might ask you to log in. After login, just click on console over here. Later, click on this, select a project and click on new project. Here, let's name our project YT Google Auth Demo and let's click on create. It is creating the project, and now let's click on select project. Later, let's click on go to API overview. Let's click on OAuth consent screen. Let's click on external and let's create one. Over here, let's enter our app name, which is just YouTube Google Auth Demo, and let's enter my Gmail. Later, let's scroll down and let's add an email address of the developer. Later, let's click on save and continue. Coming to the scopes, I would just like to access the email and the profile. Later, let's click on update. After that, let's click on save and continue. For the test users, I'll just add my Gmail and I click on add. Later, I'll close this pop-up and I click on save and continue. Here's the summary over here. Let's scroll down and click on back to dashboard. Okay, I think the test users are not added. So let's click on add users and let's write our Gmail. Let's click on save. Now let's go to credentials tab. Let's click on create credentials and let's choose OAuth client ID. Now for the application type, let's choose web application in my case. Let's scroll down and add an URI for the authorized JavaScript origins, which in my case is localhost 3000 as I am using React or Next. Later, in the authorized redirect URI, let's also add the same URL. Later, let's remove the slash as Google is giving me an error. Let's click on create. The OAuth client ID has been created, so let's download the JSON. Also, let's copy the client ID and go to Appwrite console. Let's click on Authentication tab. Let's go to Settings and let's scroll down and search for Google and click on it, and later in the app ID paste the client ID. Again go and copy the client secret and paste it in the app secret. Again enable it and click on update. Now Google Authentication is successfully enabled. So I have quickly created a Next.js app over here and just started the development environment server. And I have created two files over here. One is the index.js, which has a button which says sign up with Google. And the other file is a dashboard. And I have added a few styles over here. Later, let's go to the website and it looks like this right now. So this is the button, and now let's add an on-click listener over here. And let's say register via Google. And let me just copy this name and create a function over here. And this is going to be an async function. Before that, let us just create a folder called Appwrite, and inside that let's create a file called appwriteconfig.js. Over here let's just import account from Appwrite and also client. Let's just initialize the client over here. Later I'll just say client dot set endpoint, and let us go to the Appwrite dashboard. Let's go to settings. Now let's just copy the API endpoint and paste it in our VS Code. Later let's also copy the project ID and let's say dot set project and let's paste that ID. Later let's just initialize the account. Const account is equal to new account, and let's just pass the client inside it. I guess we could just export it right away. And let's close appwrite.config.js, and I'll just import account over here. Later over here let's just say account dot create OAuth 2 session, and if I press on control and click on this function, I can see that Appwrite is requiring a provider, a success string and a failure string, and this success string is the URL of the website which after the login it should redirect to. So let's go to index.js and let's just pass Google as the provider. Later let's just go to the website over here, and I'll just copy this link and I'll just paste it over here and say dashboard. And if the authentication had failed, it should just redirect to the index page or the login page. So I'll just await this. Const response is equal to this thing, and I'll just log the response. Let's just try this, and over here we got an error. Let's just see. Okay, the provider should be in small case, so let's just change it to small case and try it again. And we got an error from the Google side. Let's click on error details to see the error. And yeah, so Appwrite is redirecting to this link, and in the Google console we haven't mentioned this link as the authorized redirect URI. So let's go to the Google console and let's just click on the credentials section. Let's click on web client 1. Over here let's add another URI under the authorized redirect URIs, and I'll just paste this link and I'll click on save. And let's wait for a few seconds. Let's go back, reload the page and try again. And yeah, we have successfully built the Google authentication. So let's click on my Google account over here. And yeah, I have been successfully authenticated. So now let's just implement the logout functionality. For that, let's go to dashboard.js, and as you can see, I have added a h1 tag and a button called logout. Over here, let's just import account from Appwrite config.js. Later, I'll just create a function async function logout, and I'll just link this function to the on click of this button. In this logout function, we'll just say account.delete session, and we'll just delete the current session. And as this task will take some time, we'll just add an await over here. And in the due time, I guess it would be awesome if we showed a loading symbol over there. For that, let's just create a new state. Const is logging out and set is logging out is equal to use state, and by default it will be on false. And over here, let's just turn it to true, and we'll just do some conditional rendering over here. We'll just say if logging out is equal to true, then we'll just render a h1 tag saying loading. And in case it is false, we'll just pass these things. I'll just format the document. And after the user has been logged out, I just want it to be redirected to the index page or the login page. For that, let's just import use router hook from Next.js, and we'll just initialize it over here. Const router is equal to use router, and we'll just copy router and let's say router dot push, and we'll push the user to the index page or the login page. Now let's go to the website and reload it and click on logout. It is showing me loading, and later I have came to the login page. So we have built the authentication system successfully, but the protected routes are still not working. For example, currently I'm logged out, but if I try and go to the dashboard, I'm able to visit it. So let's work on that. Now, to implement the protected routes, let's create an use effect over here. And it takes a function and a dependency array. In the dependency array, let's pass the router so that every time the page is redirected, it runs this use effect hook. And after that, inside the use effect hook, let's just say const user is equal to account.get. This .get function gets the current user active session. Later, let's just say user.then, and over here we'll get a response. And if we get the response, it means that the user is logged in successfully. In that case, I'll just create a new state over here. Let's say user info and set user info is equal to use state, and I'll just set the user info over here. Set user info, and I'll set the response. Later, I'll also console log this response. And in case of error, it means that the user is not logged in. And in that case, I'll just say router dot push, and I'll just redirect him to the login page or the index page. So let's just try this. I'll just go to the login and I'll go to the Appwrite and I'll just go to Auth. I'll just delete this thing. I'll just reload and now I'll try to go to the dashboard. And as you can see, it has been redirected me to the index or the login page, but in a few milliseconds I got a glance of that dashboard. To in that case, we'll just show a preloader. For that, let's just copy user info, and over here I'll just copy this whole thing and I'll say if user info is there, I would like to show these things. And in case the user info is not there, I would just show a h1 tag of loading. I'll just format the document over here and let us go and check it out. Let me go to the dashboard. And as you can see, I got a glance of the loading screen and I got redirected again. So now let's log in again and I am being redirected to the dashboard. Let me just inspect and go to console and I have got an object over here. If I try to open it, I could see all the details of the user such as email, name, phone verification, preferences, registration date, etc. Now let's try to display the name of the user instead of the Mr. User. So let me close this inspect panel and open VS Code, and over here I'll just I'll just copy this user info, and over here let me just put some curly braces and paste user info and put a question mark and dot which indicates optional chaining, and later let's pass the name. And now if I reload the page, I got an error. Let's try to reload it again, and over here I have got the name of the user. Now it is good, but the code seems to be very messy. So let us create a new component folder over here inside the source. Let's create components, and inside this components let's create a dashboard.jsx, and let's say RFC, and I'll just go to dashboard.js and copy all these things. I'll cut it and go to dashboard.jsx and paste it over here with a React fragment. And I'll format the document. Later, I'll go to dashboard.js and instead of returning these React fragments, I'll just import dashboard with a capital D indicating the components, and over here I'll just pass that dashboard. Later, I'll just format the document. So let us create a loading.jsx, and this will return just a h1 with loading. And I'll also import that loading component over here. And instead of returning this h1 with loading, I'll just return the loading component. I'll just copy it again and paste it over here. And there you go. Your code is being more prettier. Now let's go to the website, and yeah, we got an error. Let's check it out. So the error is that user info is not defined. In that case, let's pass the user info in the props over here. Let's just pass name, and I'll just put name over here. And over here at the dashboard, I'll pass a prop called name, and it will be the user info with optional chaining and dot name. Now let's reload the page, and we got another error that logout is not defined. So in that case, we'll also pass the logout function, or how about just copying the logout function and pasting it inside the component. That's a better choice. I'll just paste it over here, and I'll just import account from Appwrite config and format the document. And now I'll just try again, reload the page, and yeah, styles is not defined. So I'll just go to the dashboard, copy the styles over here, and I'll paste it over here. Now let's reload the page, and yeah, this Google Authentication app is successfully running up.